The Shepnaz podcast begins now.
This is the Shepnaz podcast. My name is Joe. I'm hosting today, and we're continuing our discussion about all the people that went to Overflow Conference in Michigan. Yes, that's right. It's in Michigan. But other than that, it's a great conference. And we are picking up our discussion from yesterday, and all these people stayed all night long, stayed in the same clothes, and then we decided to keep going ahead and moving forward with this episode. So we had discussed in yesterday's episode where Zach was sharing to us, and he shared to us about living out of the overflow and being filled up and realizing you can't be ministering to people if you're empty. And Will Call told us about envy and why that doesn't have a place in worship arts, doesn't have a place anywhere, really, but especially here. Then Gina told us something. It was about the Sabbath, yes, and it was about taking rest. And then Jillian shared with us, because she won an arm wrestle battle with Kristen of who got to go first. And so Jillian shared with us kind of like understanding, well, how do I put that? You'd put it into words much better than I did. But I would say kind of keeping the right frame of mind when you know that you're honing your craft as a musician, as an artist, as a creative, and not getting wrapped up in what all that, whether or not it's appreciated, whether or not anybody else, we just know that this is what we're doing for the Lord. And if you keep your frame of mind there, it's a lot easier to understand that the one who really counts does appreciate our efforts. So with that said, we still have Joshua, Brianna, and Dan, and Kristen. And since, Kristen, you so patiently waited all night long.
I'm awake now.
The sun will be rising soon. Would you tell us what your highlights were from Overflow?
So it's kind of hard to pick because, like a couple other people have said it, there's just so many things to take away from each and every message and the breakout sessions. But I'll just pick two that really, really spoke to me. One is the fact that my daughter was with me. I'm a crier. It's going to happen. And just
AJ, she really wishes you would have come to the podcast recording.
She would have been like, "No, Mom, don't cry about it." But having her with me, and she leads worship for a youth group, and just experiencing her worship was just so beautiful for me, and it kind of took me back to when my dad, used to say how much joy you get from seeing your children worship the Lord, and I got that. Like, she was just in it, and I didn't exist to her at that moment. It was just her and God. It was just so beautiful for me as her mom. And then, sometimes you do things right? It's not me, it's God, obviously, but sometimes it's hard to see the right things, but then when that happens, it's like, wow. And another thing for me, though, was one of the breakout sessions. These two were actually in that breakout session with us. At the very end, the session was called Not Just Another Voice. And I mean, I wish we had a recording of it, because I think all of us really need to hear the message that he gave us. But at the very end, he gave us all a blindfold, and we put those on, and he was like, just stand up, do whatever you need to do. And I just stepped out into the aisleway, because I'm a mover. You understand this? Like, I move all over the place. I don't stand still when I sing. And so I just kind of stepped out in that aisle so I didn't step on Aurora. And we put the blindfolds on, and he just started singing. He's like, just sing in unison, right? And so we just started singing. And we did, 2 or 3 worship songs, and we just kind of like were going through them. And at one point he said, just let go. Like, how do you worship when nobody is looking, And so I even had my eyes closed. I'm under a blindfold. But like, for me, I just needed it was just me and God, and to have that moment where I could, if I needed to raise my hands, if I needed to get on my knees, like however worship felt for me, I could do it without worrying about anybody around me. And it's so hard sometimes when you're on stage or when you're doing other things. I'm a doer. I'm involved in probably more than enough ministries. And it's really hard to not think about what other people are thinking. And especially when you're on stage in front of 200 people on a Sunday morning, it's like, you know, if I raise my hands, if I start jumping, you know, and I totally will worship that way. But there, it's really scary, you know, because what are people going to think of me? What are they going to do? But with that blindfold on, nobody existed but me and God. And it was just such a beautiful moment. And I could just worship without worry. It was just a full abandon. And it was fantastic.
Nice.
That's cool.
Nice.
Just found my blindfold in my back pocket
Did you?
today.
Yeah, I went
went through the laundry. It's all good.
She uses it now whenever she drives.
It's probably better that way. That was a good session. That was a great session.
So, Kristen, with what you were saying, it actually brought to mind a Bible story. You know, when we talking about what does it look like to worship and not care what everybody else is thinking, I know I have hang-ups with that myself. For whatever weird reason, like if I'm in a position where I'm leading, like I'm on the platform or whatever, I can do whatever. If I'm standing right beside 2 or 3 other people, it is very hard for me to get free. Now, there's been times that I have, but it's a lot harder for me. But it's kind of the same thing where it's easy for me to talk to a group of people, but it's harder for me to start a conversation with one person that I don't know. Kind of that same thing. But enough about me. What I was going back to, is the Bible story of David worshiping. And when he was so happy about the return of the ark and just praising God, and before you know it, he's out in the middle of the street in his underwear dancing and praising the Lord. Yeah. And he did not care. And even his wife was like, "You're the king, you know. Is that the way? This is not the way you should be behaving." And so maybe that kind of thinking is in the back of our heads, that somebody's going to think we're trying to be a spectacle, or somebody's going to think that we're trying to be the center of attention. And I'm sure that there are people that do that. We'll let God sort that out.
Yeah. Exactly.
I remember when I was a lot younger, when I was a teenager, outdoor Christian festivals were a big, big thing. And like every summer, I would go to one of them. And I can remember going to one that was called Fishnet, that was in Front Royal, Virginia. And if you could imagine a very family-friendly Christian Woodstock, that's pretty much what it was. Right? I mean, you're talking
amazing.
15,000 people on a hillside, and everybody camping, and by the end of the week, everybody stinking. But it was still an incredible worship time. And I grew up in a very conservative kind of worship style. And so it was really different for me to witness like people running circles, and I mean literally running circles and waving their hands and all of that. And, you know, my dad took a little issue with it because he was like, "Oh, this is, you know, I don't know." But then after a while, you know, realizing that there was this person over there, and I can still see the image in my head even now as I share it, of this woman that was just, after she had been running around and doing all the things that we would have thought were just a spectacle, that she had raised her hands, closed her eyes, and tears just going down her cheeks. And at that moment, I realized I have no place to judge that person on how they were worshiping, because that was all worship. And if I thought it was anything different, well, that was on me, because it certainly wasn't what she was showing. So now that we know that Gina has a blindfold in her back pocket and will pull it out at any moment, Thank
to
you
lend to
for
somebody.
sharing, Kristen, about being freer in worship. And I think it's something, and I don't have to speak for Shelly. She'll be able to speak for herself in here in a second. But I know that she would say to everyone listening, we want you to have that freedom in
Yes.
worship on Sunday mornings.
Absolutely.
One of the things that you had said, Gina, about being able to worship side by side with all these people that were just worshiping like crazy. Well, you're in a room with 500 other worship leaders. So yeah, sure, it's easy. It gets a little harder when you come back on Sunday morning and you're like, okay, let's go. And everybody's like, okay.
Brand new event is coming to Shepherd Church this spring. Springfest happens on April 7th, and your family is sure to love it. There'll be tons of activities, from inflatable obstacle courses to a glow party, from a petting zoo to axe throwing. There's even going to be prizes for winners of games and tournaments that we have, like cornhole and cane jam. Seriously, we can't wait to see you here for Springfest. You can learn more by visiting shepnaz.org/springfest. Make plans to come and spend the evening on April 7th with us at Shepherd Church. We want to get to know you. Each month, we've got an opportunity. If you're new around here, you're invited to Pizza with the Pastors at Massey's Pizza in Gahanna. The next one happens Monday, March 20th. You can RSVP by emailing Pastor Rob at rpaul@shepnaz.org. We're looking forward to seeing you and your family there.
All right, so we're moving to the other side of the table now. So we have Dan, Brianna, Joshua, and we're going to wrap up with Shelly. Brianna, our newly appointed Associate Director of Youth Ministries. Did I get that title right? Tell me how the Overflow experience. So this was for you. This was your second year, yes?
Yes.
But first being married. So
Yes.
congratulations.
Thank you. It was really cool. I came in with a unique perspective. I don't currently serve on the worship team. I did many years ago. So I have a bit of a worship background, but coming in this new position of leadership, my first position in ministry, I came really hungry for knowledge when it comes to the leadership aspect of everything. And they have breakout sessions directed towards leadership in the church. So I learned a lot from going to the breakout sessions, very useful information, and just really kind of gave me a confidence boost in what I'm doing. And I've been applying it, so that's been really cool. But one of the things that stood out among anything, and I look back and as I reflected on the conference, I'm like, that one thing, and it seems so not minuscule, it's so powerful, but out of everything, it was the one thing that stood out, and it was the last main session. Rob McCorkle spoke, and he had us all come to the front, and he was kind of praying a commission over us and sending us out, and I can't remember the context around it, but he made a statement, and he said, Lord, I have my faith is in you, Lord, and I will trust you no matter what. And that I physically just felt it in my soul, just piercing me. And it was just really had me reflect on my life, and for many years struggled with, God, I trust you, but I'm going to take this back, or God, I'm going to hold on to this, or and just never really, surrendering, but then just not fully at that point of do I really trust God no matter what? And that in that moment, I just felt the Holy Spirit just speak over me, I can be trusted no matter what, under any circumstance, with anything. And so that was a really a beautiful moment for me, and I'm really grateful for that, and I've been reflecting on it daily since then. And so, and it was so simple. I don't think Rob even really knew it in the moment, but yeah, and just being in the presence of the Holy Spirit, worshiping with everybody was beautiful. So
Nice. That is great. Speaking of Rob McCorkle, he has volunteered to be a permanent guest whenever necessary on the podcast. And that's great because we love having him. Although I think he's on the RV tour for a little while, but when he gets back, I know we'll have him back again. So for today, that is our episode of the Shepnaz podcast, and just ask that you would continue to spread the word about what we're doing, and to find out more about the church, more about the podcast, go to shepnaz.org, and also follow us on social media. Go to the platform that you listen to on and give us a 5-star rating so that that'll help us spread the word to others. For Pastor Shelly, Pastor Zack, Pastor Joey that's not here, I'm Joe. Thank you for listening today. This podcast is a production of the Shepherd Church of the Nazarene, Gahanna, Ohio. Email to podcast@shepnaz.org and let us know what you think.